The sun was barely over the hills when I stepped outside that morning, coffee in hand, boots sinking into the dew-soaked grass of my field. There's something sacred about that early silence. The way the breeze tugs at your sleeves, the way the light catches on every blade of grass like gold thread. I've walked this land for most of my life. My father did before me and his father before him. This patch of earth, 23 stubborn, beautiful acres, has been ours for 4 generations. It isn't fancy. No white fences or grand barns, just open fields, a weathered shed, and a narrow creek that splits the southern edge like a silver ribbon. But it's ours. It's the only thing that's ever truly felt permanent in a world that keeps trying to shift beneath your feet. Over the years, we've fought to keep it. Property taxes kept climbing. We weathered droughts that cracked the soil like old porcelain. More than once, a slick-talking developer knocked on our door with promises of cash and convenience. I didn't even let them finish their pitch. I told them the land wasn't for sale, not now, not ever. Some laughed. One got angry. They all left empty-handed. But what really started to change things was the neighborhood. What used to be cow pastures and oak groves started sprouting rows of beige homes with identical porches and tiny manicured lawns. One day, it was just a rumor. They're putting in a gated community a few miles over. Then it was 2 miles over. Then it was 1. And then it was right up against my northern fence. That's when they came, the HOA. At first, it was just flyers. Polite but smug letters talking about neighborhood cohesion and long-term land development alignment. Then came the emails, then calls. Some even stopped by. They all had that same patronizing tone, like they were doing me a favor by offering to buy me out. Said I was holding up community progress. Said my field was an underutilized parcel. I told them what I'd told the developers, not for sale. They didn't take it well. I could see it in their eyes, that simmering disbelief that someone like me would turn them down, as if I didn't know what I was sitting on, as if I didn't understand how important their plans were. I held my ground every time. But nothing prepared me for what I found that morning. I had taken the southern path toward the creek when I saw the tracks, deep grooves in the soil, straight as a bullet. Not from a truck, not from a tractor. These were heavy. I knelt down, ran my fingers along the pressed-down earth. It was fresh, maybe a day or 2 old. I followed the tracks slowly, a sick feeling growing in my chest. They sliced across the field, cut through untouched grass, churned up the soil near the far edge, and then I saw them. Little orange flags sticking out of the ground. Bright plastic markers, maybe a dozen of them, spaced out along a buried line. And then I saw the label, fiber optic line, do not disturb. I blinked, my mouth went dry. Fiber here, on my asterisk land, no warning, no letter. No one asked permission. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. I traced the line with my eyes, then with my feet, walking the full length of the intrusion until I could see the edge of the HOA's development just beyond the tree line. They'd done it. Those smug suits actually ran their infrastructure through my property. At first, I was just confused. Maybe it was a mistake, a routing error. Surely someone would have told me before putting fiber cables into land they didn't own, right? But I knew better. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. They thought I was too old, too stubborn, too out of touch to notice or care. They thought if they just did it I'd eventually roll over, sign the papers, take a payout. They had no idea who they were messing with. Rage doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in, starts like a low hum in your chest, then rises until it's the only thing you can hear. That's what it felt like after I found those cable markers buried across my field. That hum turned into a storm the more I stared at them. They'd gone too far. This wasn't just a trespass, it was a violation, a spit in the face of every no I'd ever given them. And there was only one person I could think of who'd be smug enough to greenlight something this brazen without a second thought. Janet. Janet Kessler. HOA president, queen bee of the suburban court, high priestess of community beautification. I didn't even bother calling. I drove straight to the HOA office. Strip mall beige, windows tinted, fake ficus plants flanking the entryway. I walked in, covered in sweat and dust, probably still smelling like the dirt they'd violated. Janet was behind the desk. I didn't wait for pleasantries. Why are there fiber lines running through my property? She blinked, then smiled. That same slow, smug, weaponized smile she always used when she thought she had the upper hand. Oh, that must be part of the emergency infrastructure upgrade. We sent notices out a few weeks ago. Maybe you missed it. I didn't blink. You didn't send me asterisk anything, and no one had permission to dig on my land. She raised her perfectly penciled eyebrows. There was an access clause, easement language in the expansion paperwork, totally routine. That word, easement, my stomach flipped. There was no easement on my land. My family kept the original boundaries clear for a reason. No shared utilities, no shared roads. Every inch of the field was ours, and every deed since my grandfather's time made that crystal clear. Janet shrugged like it wasn't her problem. If you want to file a complaint, feel free to speak to the infrastructure team, but it's done now. I'm sure it won't impact your farming activities. She looked me up and down like I was something she'd scrape off her Tesla's tires. I left before I did something I'd regret. The second I got home, I started digging. Not into the dirt, into asterisk records. I pulled up the parcel maps, the deed, the land surveys, no easements, no shared access, nothing that gave anyone the right to dig so much as a hole without my say-so. I went to the county records office, spoke to a clerk I knew from high school. We checked permits, construction orders, utility filings. And there it was, nothing, no permits filed, no public notice. No easement approval, no environmental review. They hadn't just made a mistake. They'd bulldozed their way onto my land using a fake justification and hoped I wouldn't catch them. I called a lawyer, a good one. She listened, asked for documents, and when I sent them, she called me back that night. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fire behind her words. They screwed up big time. This is a direct violation of property rights. You could sue them into next year. I almost did. I could see it so clearly in my head, Janet getting served in the middle of a board meeting. Depositions, headlines, watching them try to squirm their way out of something they knew damn well was illegal. But I didn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Because the moment I hung up, something else occurred to me. If they were arrogant enough to lay their infrastructure through my asterisk land, then they just handed me something even better than a lawsuit. Leverage. See, it wasn't just the fiber cable that pissed me off. It was the asterisk assumption. The idea that they had all the power and I was just some stubborn bumpkin standing in the way of progress. They didn't see me as an equal. They saw me as an obstacle. That's when I realized I didn't need to fight them head-on, not yet. First, I needed to watch. So I started logging everything. Every time a truck came onto the field from the HOA side, I wrote it down. Plate numbers, dates, times. I took pictures of tire tracks, noted where new flags appeared, even flew my cousin's drone over the property line a few times to track their work. I built a file the size of a phone book, pictures, maps, notes, receipts. They thought they could sneak in, do their business, and slide away before anyone noticed. But they forgot one thing. I was here before them, and I wasn't going anywhere. I spent the next few weeks watching, quietly, patiently. Every truck that rolled across the back edge of my property went into my log. Every marker that popped up overnight I documented. I didn't interfere. Not yet. I wanted them to think I'd rolled over. I wanted Janet and her HOA circus to get comfortable, maybe even smug, thinking they'd gotten away with it. But in the background, I was moving. See, if you've lived in one place long enough and you've kept your ears open, you hear things. And I'd been hearing about a company called Clearline for years. Small, independent internet provider, locally owned. Good reputation, fast service. And one big problem, the HOA had blocked them from ever entering the neighborhood. Contracts, exclusivity clauses, preferred vendor nonsense. It was all about control. Janet and her board made sure the community's only choice was the overpriced, slow-as-molasses service they had tied in. Some of the residents grumbled, but no one could do a damn thing about it. The HOA had the gates locked from the inside. But not anymore. Not with my field sitting there, cracked open like a vein, already hiding someone else's cables. So I picked up the phone and called Clearline. The guy who answered, Tom, sounded surprised at first, said he'd heard of me. I guess the HOA had painted me as the difficult landowner who refused to cooperate with progress. I told him the truth, and I asked him one question. If I leased you a direct route through my land, straight into the neighborhood, would you be interested? He didn't even pause. We'd be very interested. That set things in motion real fast. Tom and his legal team met with me 2 days later right there at my kitchen table. They brought maps, proposals, and coffee stronger than mine. The plan was simple. I leased them a narrow corridor, 10 feet wide, running parallel to the illegal HOA line, and in exchange, they pay me monthly, handle all permits and labor, and install a secondary line right beside the HOA. But this one, it'd be theirs. And unlike the other one, it'd be there legally. I didn't sign that day. I took the papers, slept on it, ran it by my lawyer. She just smiled. It's brilliant, she said. You don't just get revenge, you get paid for it. So I signed. We moved fast. Permits were filed, real ones this time. The kind that left a paper trail thick enough to bury Janet in. Clearline brought in a small, discreet crew. They worked mostly at night, trenching with care, making sure not to disturb the HOA line, though it took everything in me not to tell them to yank it out by the roots. I walked the site every day, like a farmer tending a second crop. And little by little, the new line took shape. No one from the HOA noticed, not at first. I made sure to keep everything on my land. Trucks stayed low profile. Crews came and went quickly, no big signage, no flashy equipment. We were a shadow operation, sliding in right beneath their noses. The irony wasn't lost on me. How they'd snuck in thinking they could control me. And now I was using the exact same trench to take back that power. Clearline was grateful, more than grateful, they were excited. This wasn't just about getting into a new market. This was about sending a message that no HOA, no matter how smug or connected, could wall them out forever. Not if someone on the asterisk inside opened the door. And I was the door. When the last of the fiber was laid and the splicing started, I stood at the edge of the field one evening and looked out across the land. The flags were still there, bright orange and green, marking the twin lines like arteries. One buried in arrogance, the other built in defiance. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about giving people a choice. about showing them that control wasn't absolute, not if someone had the guts to push back. The war hadn't started yet. But my side, we were already in position. Barely a week after Clear Line's crews wrapped up and pulled out, the first signs of trouble started to bubble up. At first, it was whispers, confused residents asking why there were new utility flags behind their fences. A few noticed subtle changes in their signal strength. One guy posted on the neighborhood forum, "Anyone else getting faster speeds all of a sudden?" And then, just like I knew it would happen, the HOA found out. It was a Tuesday morning. I was tending to the east side fence when I heard tires ripping up the gravel road. I looked up, and there she was, Janet, storming out of her Lexus in a full power walk, heels stabbing the earth like she was personally offended by it. She didn't knock, didn't call, just marched right up to my porch like she owned the place. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't even bother asking what she meant. I just sipped my coffee and gave her a long, silent look, the kind that lets someone know you're ready for whatever they've brought with them. "You violated community guidelines," she hissed, red-faced and barely holding her composure. "Unauthorized utility access, unapproved infrastructure. You'll be fined for this." I leaned against the railing, calm as a lake. "Everything I did is legal, Janet. I've got county permits, signed lease agreements, and maps that show it's all on my land. You want copies? I'll be happy to print them for you." She sputtered, like her brain couldn't compute that she might not be in control. "You can't just let some rogue company install their lines into our asterisk community." I stepped down off the porch, close enough that she had to tilt her chin to look me in the eyes. "I didn't let anyone into your community. I let them onto my asterisk land. The only reason their fiber reaches your neighborhood is because you illegally buried your own lines through my field first. You crossed a line, Janet. I just made sure there was another one next to it." She tried to pivot, threaten legal action. She said she'd contact the sheriff and pursue injunctions. I smiled and pulled out the manila folder I'd prepared days ago. Inside, copies of the permits, the lease agreement with clear line, time-stamped photos of every inch of the trench, and a notarized statement from my lawyer confirming I had every right to do what I did. She didn't take the folder. She just stood there, silent, cheeks twitching like a bad poker player with a losing hand. And then she left. Didn't say goodbye, didn't say anything. Just turned and got back into her car, driving off faster than she arrived, her tires spitting gravel behind her. But the real fireworks started days later. Because Clear Line didn't stay in the shadows for long, they went live. And suddenly, residents started switching. At first, it was just a few tech-savvy folks who noticed their HOA internet had always been overpriced and underperforming. But when they realized Clear Line was faster, cheaper, and get this, asterisk not controlled by the HOA asterisk, it caught fire. A single mom down the street posted about how her daughter could finally attend Zoom classes without buffering every 5 minutes. An older couple bragged about their Netflix never lagging again. Someone even started a spreadsheet comparing monthly rates. Clearline beat the HOA's provider by almost 30%. Word spread like wildfire. I didn't say a word, I just watched. Janet, on the other hand, was spiraling. She tried sending out emergency bulletins, claimed Clearline's access was unauthorized, warned residents about network stability concerns. She even called an emergency HOA meeting, accusing me of endangering the community. But the people were smarter than she gave them credit for. They weren't loyal to her. They were loyal to whoever made their lives better, and at that moment, that was me and the company she tried to keep out. You could feel the mood shifting. There was a quiet rebellion building in that perfect little neighborhood of matching mailboxes and neatly trimmed hedges. The residents were starting to question things, not just the internet, but the rules, the power, the way Janet and the board made decisions without listening. And behind it all, beneath their lawns and sidewalks, two fiber lines hummed quietly in the dirt. One installed by deception, the other by invitation. They thought they could dig through my land and leave me in the dust. But I'd turn the tables. I'd open the door they'd spent years trying to keep locked. And the people, they were walking through it. The next HOA meeting wasn't supposed to be anything special, just a routine quarterly check-in, the kind of thing where they talk about fence paint colors and lawn length. But that night, it was standing room only. The rec center was packed wall to wall, folding chairs scraping across the floor, people murmuring with that electric kind of anticipation, like everyone was waiting for a storm that had been circling for too long. I slipped in through the back, kept to the wall, silent. I didn't need to speak, not yet. I'd already said enough without opening my mouth. Janet was at the front table, flanked by the board like generals before a battle. But she looked different, tight-lipped, tired. She kept shuffling her papers like they might somehow protect her. The meeting opened with formalities, but everyone in that room knew why they were there. The second public comment was allowed. A woman in the second row stood up, holding a printed flyer from Clear Line. Her voice didn't shake. I switched providers last week. My son can finally play his online games without lag, and it costs half as much. Why did we never have this option before? Janet's face barely moved. Clear Line is not an authorized vendor under the HOA's current service contract. Their access was not approved by this board. That's when a man from the back stood up, bald, maybe in his 50s, voice sharp and tired. They wouldn't need your approval if the service is better. You've locked us into a crap deal for years. Another voice jumped in. My daughter's tutoring is online. This new connection actually works. You want us to go back to buffering videos and dropped calls. Someone else, why did we only find out about Clear Line through neighbors? Why wasn't this option ever brought to a vote? Janet tried to hold the line. We negotiated the original contract with the best interests of the community in mind. Infrastructure changes like these can't be made recklessly. But that's when it hit her. The room wasn't with her anymore. The board members shifted in their seats. One of them, a younger guy in glasses, Matt, I think his name was, cleared his throat and spoke up. With all due respect, Janet, I switched too, and it's better. I think the community deserves the choice. Silence. She glared at him like he'd committed treason, but he didn't back down. No one did. That's when she pulled out her last card. I'd like to motion to shut down unauthorized utility access to the neighborhood, effective immediately. It was desperate, and everyone knew it. Matt didn't even look at her when he said, I vote no. One by one, the board members followed. No, no, abstain, no. Janet's motion died right there, cold and hollow. Then someone from the audience said what everyone else was already thinking. Maybe it's time for new leadership. She tried to laugh it off. If you're suggesting a recall, I'd advise you all to review the bylaws. But she never got to finish. Because someone shouted, we have reviewed them. And the room erupted. It wasn't just the internet anymore. This was years of pent-up frustration boiling over, fines for trash cans out an hour too early, letters about garden gnomes, threats over paint shades. It all spilled out now. Loud, raw, honest. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching Janet's empire crack right down the middle. The next day, the whispers began. Neighbors walking their dogs talked about board replacements. Sidewalk conversations about signatures, elections, change. And through it all, Clear Line kept digging in. New homes, new lines, expanding quietly like roots under the surface. The HOA's provider, they started pulling back. One truck was seen packing up equipment. Another stopped scheduling new installs. They knew what was coming. Janet tried to hold on, but power once questioned rarely recovers. She built her little kingdom on control. And now she was watching it crumble, fiber by fiber, voice by voice, house by house. There's a moment in every fight when the tide turns. You don't always see it right away, but you feel it. It's like a current shifting beneath your feet. Everything looks the same on the surface, but you know something has changed. For me, that moment came when I hit upload. The video wasn't flashy. Just me sitting at the edge of my field with the grass swaying behind me telling the story, my story. I didn't dramatize it, I didn't scream, I didn't point fingers, I just laid it out. How the HOA trespassed onto my land, laid illegal fiber without my permission, and how I fought back, not with lawsuits or protests, but with patience, with strategy, and a lease agreement. I told people how Clear Line had been kept out for years, how the HOA controlled everything, right down to the wires under their lawns, and how, when they tried to bury their infrastructure through my land without consent, I buried something right beside it. Choice. I ended the video with a shot of those two lines running parallel across my field. Two futures, side by side. And then I let it go. I didn't expect much. A few shares, maybe some comments. But by morning, it had thousands of views. By the afternoon, tens of thousands. Local Facebook groups lit up. Reddit threads broke it down frame by frame. People started calling it the fiber feud. I got emails from strangers, neighbors I'd never met thanking me. Some asked how they could switch to Clear Line. Others just wanted to say they felt inspired. And then the county called. They'd seen the video too. Apparently, when you accuse a registered HOA of illegally installing infrastructure without permits on private property, people pay attention. I was invited to speak at the next county board meeting. They wanted to hear more about the incident, but I knew what it really meant. They wanted this on record. So I went, wore my boots and flannel just like I do every day, walked into that sterile government building and told my story again, clear, calm, and documented. I handed over maps, permit logs, photos, everything. You could see the officials trading glances. Some were angry, some were embarrassed, but all of them knew what they were looking at. This wasn't just a neighborhood squabble. This was a land rights violation, and it had happened right under their noses. The local paper picked it up next. Front page headline, HOA bypasses landowner in fiber deal gets outmaneuvered. My name was in bold. There was a photo of me standing in the field, pointing to the orange and blue marker flags. They made me look like a pioneer or something. But the best part, the sweetest part, was what came in the mail that week. My first check from Clear Line. It wasn't just some token payment, it was real, substantial. Every month they used my land as a legal corridor into that HOA, I got paid. Every new household that switched, that was more leverage, more pressure, more proof that what they tried to bury without permission was now turning a profit for me. Janet didn't make any more surprise visits. She went silent. No more flyers, no more threats. The HOA's inbox, I heard, was flooded with complaints. Board members were quietly resigning. The ones who stayed were now facing heat from county officials and residents alike. Clearline, meanwhile, doubled down. They put up signs, sent reps door to door, rolled out promotional rates. They were polite, professional, and absolutely relentless. And with every home they connected, they drove another nail into the coffin of Janet's control. I'd done what lawsuits couldn't, what yelling never would. I beat them not by fighting harder, but by playing smarter. I didn't just defend my land. I monetized it. They thought they could carve a path through my field without my consent and leave me with nothing but the mess. Instead, I turned that path into a pipeline. And now, every step they took across my property, it costs them. The funny thing is, they never expected to lose. People like Janet, they build their world like it's made of stone, rules etched in concrete, power fixed in place. But what they forget is that concrete cracks, pressure builds, and when it does, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet snap, a shift you don't notice until the whole thing starts falling apart. By the time the next HOA newsletter went out, Janet's name was gone. Just gone, no announcement, no farewell message. Just a new signature at the bottom, someone from the board I barely recognized. Rumor was she resigned in private, citing health reasons. But everyone knew the truth. She lost not just her title, but her grip, her carefully manicured system of control, fines, threats, exclusivity deals. It all collapsed the moment residents realized they had a choice. And me, I didn't stop. Clearline was now the dominant provider in the neighborhood. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Whole blocks were converting. Every new hookup ran through my land, through that buried line they tried to sneak in without asking. But here's the delicious twist. Their original line, still there, still running underneath my soil. They never had the budget or the willpower to dig it up and reroute. The logistics, the cost, it would have been a nightmare. So it stayed, and I let it. Because now, every inch of that cable is a reminder. I made them leave it in writing, an easement agreement that went through my attorney, reviewed and notarized. Ironclad. If they wanted to keep their infrastructure in my land, they had to admit it was mine. No more pretending, no more silent trespassing. It became a corridor, my corridor, a permanent access route governed by me and protected by law. They couldn't touch it without asking, couldn't build on it, couldn't even send maintenance crews across it without notice and approval. Every month, they pay me a fee just to keep their cables where they are, just to maintain the very thing they tried to bury in secret. Sweetest check I ever cashed. They thought I'd be bitter, that I'd want to rip it all up in revenge. But revenge, it's better when it pays. Now I walk my field with a different feeling, not just pride but power. The earth under my boots tells a story, one of betrayal, of stubbornness, of strategy, and of victory. Because in the end, they didn't beat me. They empowered me. What started as a bypass became a business. What they tried to hide became the foundation of their undoing. And that HOA. It changed. The board was replaced slowly, one by one. New faces, less arrogance. Residents started speaking up more. They weren't afraid anymore. They'd seen someone stand up and win. And somewhere deep down, I think they started wondering how many other rules they'd been living under without ever questioning. Good. Let them question. Let them think. I didn't need a courtroom. I didn't need to scream. All I needed was dirt, patience, and a cable line they didn't ask permission to bury. And now, that cable works for *me. Not in any obvious way. The grass still sways in the breeze like it always has. The creek still hums at the southern edge, weaving its quiet path past the rocks. But when I sit on the old wooden bench near the fence line and watch the sun melt over the hills, I feel it, that difference. Because now I don't just see soil and roots and history. I see legacy. The kind you fight for. The kind you *earn. This wasn't about fiber cables. It was never just about wires in the dirt. It was about respect. About what happens when power becomes entitlement and entitlement turns into trespass. They saw my land as a blank space, an inconvenience between them and their next phase of control. They thought because they had money, meetings, and matching polos, they could bend people like me out of the way. But I wasn't in the way. I was standing my ground. And not with rage, not with picket signs or shouting matches, just with truth, with law, with a quiet, stubborn refusal to be erased. This land is more than acres on a map. It's where my grandfather taught me to mend fences, where I buried my first dog, where I learned how to listen to the wind, the birds, the silence. And that silence, it taught me more than any meeting ever could. Because silence is patient, and patience wins wars. Now every time I walk the property line, I step over two cables buried deep below the surface, one laid in arrogance, the other in defiance. They're not just utilities, they're footprints, markers of a moment when someone tried to take what wasn't theirs and failed. People stop by sometimes, neighbors who heard the story, families who switched providers, even a few from outside the area who saw the video. They ask me what I'd do if I had to do it all over again. I tell them I wouldn't change a thing. Because what I proved wasn't just that I could win. It's that anyone can if they know what they're standing on. Power isn't in the loudest voice or the biggest boardroom. Sometimes it's in the dirt. The same dirt your hands grew up in. The same dirt they thought they could bury without asking. Not anymore. Not ever again.